But we begin tonight as far south as we can go on the mainland, Bluff, and in the wild strait beyond it, and Stewart Island beyond that. It's there the famous Bluff oysters come from, a delicacy to those who can afford them, and industry, jobs and economic lifeblood for those who fish the world-famous resource. And now they are under threat from a parasite that's been found at Stewart Island, although the Ministry for Primary Industries is being cautious around threat assessment, as we'll hear. But the potential scale of the impact can be suggested by previous contaminations of a related parasite. At the beginning of this century, it wiped out almost the area's total stock, well in excess of 1 billion oysters. Last night, as we heard on Checkpoint, a meeting was held in Bluff of those who fish the oysters and those who support the industry. Today, MPI's Response Governance Group met to discuss how to protect the Fovo Strait fisheries from the parasite very nearby. I asked Geoff Gwyn, MPI's Readiness and Response Director, where they know the parasite is.
We have had 2 positive tests within Big Glory Bay in Stewart Island.
Okay, so, and they're farmed oysters, aren't they?
That's correct.
Do you believe the parasite is in Fovo Strait?
No, we don't, based on the testing we conducted in February.
So the critical thing, and this is what we were discussing with Bluff oyster fishers last night, is to get the parasite out of Stewart Island before it gets into Fovo Strait, isn't it?
It's about controlling the spread of the disease, and there's a number of options that you can do to achieve that.
And what are they?
I think the obvious options are around continuing with our current approach, which is the controlled area notice and the permitting and the surveillance and testing. There is an option, obviously, around removing the disease itself in terms of the farms, and there's a combination of those options.
Okay, can we talk about removing the disease itself? What you actually mean is just pulling up the oysters, don't you?
That is an option under consideration.
Okay, and what are the farmers saying about that?
Well, at this stage, any decision we make will be based on science, and we will be talking to those affected stakeholders prior to making any public announcement of any decision we make.
Is there a possibility that the oysters on these 2 farms where the parasites have been found will be lifted, will be just taken out of the sea?
There is that possibility. That is one of the options under consideration.
And the other option involves permitting and all that kind of stuff. I just wonder, could you explain geographically how close the Stewart Island farms are to the Fovo Strait wild stock?
I wouldn't be able to give you a nautical distance, but they are in close proximity.
Okay, and there are strong currents and strong waters through there, aren't there?
Yes, there are.
So there is a very real possibility that the parasite is just spread by the movement of water, isn't there?
That's highly likely.
That's highly likely?
Well, it is.
And if that happens, what happens to the Fovo Strait, the famous wild Bluff oysters?
If the disease was to actually get into the wild population, it would have unknown consequences, but I'd suggest they would be serious.
Does this entail potentially the loss of the Fovo Strait Bluff oyster stock?
Look, I think there's no such thing as a zero-risk game here. I think we need to look at what we have in front of us, and we do have 2 finds in Big Glory Bay, and we need to manage that. As I said, there's a number of options under consideration. We need to work with those affected stakeholders prior to making any public announcement.
When you say those affected stakeholders, you're talking about the farmers here?
And the fishers.
Well, the fishers, and we spoke to one last night who organised the meeting, just say, get those bloody oysters out of here.
They've been quite clear in their position, but like any situation, there's obviously a contrary view.
And what is the contrary view? And I'm not being disingenuous there. I just wonder if you have infected stock that you can remove in order to prevent the transmission to non-infected stock. What is the argument contrary to that?
The argument is that it won't transfer to the stock. The reality is we will be led by the science, and the science will give us a clear direction, which it already has at our governance meeting today. We will now work with those affected stakeholders prior to any public announcement.
That's Geoff Gwyn, who is MPI's Readiness and Response Director. Now,